What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the Vero Synapse Auto by ProTech. And I've been looking forward to this one since I first saw the prototype, which I believe Joseph had with them at CCKS Fall last year, but it wasn't officially announced until last month at SHOT Show, and then I was able to purchase one this past weekend directly from ProTech at Cal Knives. Now, the one sentence summary on this knife is it takes the original Vero design of the Synapse, converts it over to an auto, and then it's manufactured right here in California by ProTech. So already a really cool collab, but what was so crazy to me is that they were able to keep the pricing consistent with the rest of the Vero lineup. In fact, I paid $325 for this, which is actually cheaper than what I could buy a manual Synapse for right now online. And so that's actually pretty insane when you take into account the fact that we get upgraded steel here with the Magnacut blade. We have an automatic action with that signature ProTech kick, and it's made here in the United States. And I know that's a big barrier of entry for some people with some of the other Vero models. Maybe you admire the Vero design language, but are a little bit hesitant to pay those prices for a knife that was made in China. And so now you have the opportunity to get an American-made version of their designs at a very similar price point. I know I said I paid a little bit less than the manual version is, but one caveat I have to mention with that pricing is that that was show pricing, and ProTech is known for offering really steep discounts on their show pieces. And so I would imagine if you were to buy this online, retail is going to be closer to $400 or so, still in the ballpark of the rest of the lineup and not a significant markup over the other versions of these knives. And so I think that's a pretty crazy deal. Now, as far as the knife itself goes, it's on the larger side. I think it sits somewhere between the original Synapse and the Synapse XL at 8.1 inches in overall length. And do keep in mind, there's no listing for this anywhere online yet, so all the measurements I'm giving are measurements I took myself. I would imagine they're going to be pretty close, but if they're off by a 1/10 of an inch or a 100th of an inch, that's going to be the reason why. But I got a little bit over 8.1 inches with 4.68 inches of that being on the handle. Great handle on here, excellent ergos, and plenty of real estate for that full forefinger grip. You can see I have room on either side to spread out if I want to, creep forward, creep backwards on that handle. So I wear a size large glove, but if you're an XL or in a double XL, should have no issue getting all four fingers on the handle of this knife, which is great. And the design, one of my favorite things about it is the flat segment under the pivot. I've mentioned in several videos at this point that I'm someone who likes to get right behind the blade, as closest to it as I can get. I think it just feels a lot more balanced and just a more comfortable grip. And this allows me to get right behind that finger choil. Excellent jimping here that's grabby but not overly aggressive, so I'm not worried about sliding up. So I can get right behind that finger choil without worrying about sliding in and cutting my index finger. And so really comfortable, no hot spots for me whatsoever. But again, everyone's handle is different, hands are different. So if you get an opportunity to handle one, definitely check it out and see how it fits. Now, in terms of our blade, 3.5 inches or so, I think about 3.45 inches actually. And a drop point style blade, Magnacut on the steel, nice flat grind that goes nearly to the top of our knife, nice wedge at the tip there as well. Already talked about that jimping, nice and grabby but not overly aggressive. Pretty minimal billboarding. We have ProTech on our show side and then Magnacut right below that on the grind there. One thing that really stands out here is the lack of a fuller, and so that is present on the back side of this knife. Fortunately, that's that signature Vero fuller, the shape you can recognize immediately. In fact, if you remove that Vero logo and had never seen a Synapse but are familiar with the rest of the lineup, you'd probably still recognize this as a Vero knife. So really glad they included it on the back side of the knife. One thing that's interesting, you have plenty of access to it on the back side of the knife, but you're definitely not going to be able to flick it out using that. This is an automatic knife. The only way to deploy it is by pressing the button, and the only way to disengage that lock is again by pressing the button. So it is present there, but not something that you're going to be able to utilize to flick the knife out there. Now, one other thing that really stood out to me, in fact, it was the first thing that I thought when I picked up this knife. Hadn't seen it in a few months, obviously, picked it up off the table, and my immediate thought was, wow, that is a light. And so it weighs in at 3.38 ounces, but it feels even lighter than that to me. 3.38 ounces is light for a knife this size, don't get me wrong, but it feels even lighter than that thanks to those scales. So we have Micarta on our top scale and then aluminum on our bottom scale. And this was a show exclusive version. So we have the burgundy Micarta with the Abalone inlay. There was also black Micarta with an Abalone inlay that also looks super classy. I would imagine we'll see Abalone inlays with other materials for other show exclusive, and we'll probably see other micartas, maybe even these colors, but without the Abalone inlay, maybe with like a mosaic or a mother of pearl or even a plain button on there, but not this exact configuration again. And I believe they had 20 of each at the show, and so 40 in total. But those scales allow it to be ultra lightweight, and when you pick it up, it feels even lighter than that 3.38 ounces while still remaining incredibly balanced, because I can get right up into that pivot. So just kind of nice into the center of the knife. And that wasn't only me thinking that. I made my way back to the booth throughout the day on several occasions, either while chatting with other people or just to check out some other knives. And I heard multiple people mention it. I even heard Matt warn someone that, like, hey, that's an auto. I know it's super lightweight, so make sure you get a good grip on it before you hit the button, or it's going to go flying on you. And it definitely feels like it could. Obviously, you have that nice secure grip, and so haven't had any issue with that, but it really kicks. And it is super satisfying. Absolutely love the action on there. Again, you have the button to disengage it as well, and then you can just press it to release. No safety or anything like that, but it is basically inset into the handle, so pretty hard to accidentally deploy this one. Now, we do have a right hand tip up pocket carry, nice deep carry pocket clip that is not reversible, unfortunately. Now, I know both Vero and ProTech do make left hand versions of their knife. I doubt they've made a left hand version of this yet, but it wouldn't be entirely surprising either to see a lefty version in the future. So hopefully that is something that we might see. Now, if you're a fan of the Vero pocket clip, this does utilize a Vero titanium pocket clip here, so you're going to be pretty familiar with that. And I have to check if this is identical to the one that you can utilize with the regular version of the Synapse. I would imagine it is, but if you're planning on swapping it, maybe shoot them an email just to double check, because I know that they typically sell those in a dual pack combined with the backspacer. And if we take a look at the backspacer here, it's actually incorporated with the aluminum scale, so that's all one piece of the back scale. So you wouldn't be able to utilize that backspacer here, which makes me question whether you'd be able to utilize the pocket clip. I think it's more likely that you will be able to, but again, don't quote me, double check if that's something you want to swap out. I'm actually considering swapping mine, or maybe not swapping it, but maybe sending this one in to get a burgundy Cerakote, because I think that would look actually really cool with the burgundy micarta scales. Speaking of which, the coloration is going to vary from scale to scale. I saw some that were lighter than mine, some that were darker than mine. I did add just a hint of oil to here to darken it up. Mine was a lot lighter, except for right around the pivot. It was kind of dark because there was oil that had leaked out onto the pivot area, so it was darker at the top, lighter at the bottom. So I did apply one coat of oil so far to get that nice dark finish, and it really darkened up nicely. A lot of times I'll have to do it 2 or 3 times before it soaks in, but darkened up really nicely. You can see it's still a little bit lighter here on the ends. Really like what they did with the micarta as well. You get some nice sharp lines, which is a little bit harder to do with micarta. A lot of times you have that more gradual curve, but these get these nice sharp lines that I think look excellent. And then of course we have that aluminum scale on the back, no liners or anything like that to worry about, which is also why they were able to keep the weight so low. Now, it does incorporate a spot for a lanyard, but you are going to have to disassemble it to add that lanyard, which I actually don't have a problem with. It's nice and discreet. You don't see any lanyard hole or anything like that. Just remove the scales. I guess you maybe can thread it through there. I would imagine it's easier to just disassemble it, put your lanyard in, and then reassemble it, but maybe you can thread it through there. I think it's a little bit tight for most lanyards to just thread it through without disassembly though. But overall, really enjoying this knife so far. I don't have a lot of deep thoughts on it or anything like that at this point. I just picked this one up a couple days ago, so haven't been able to spend a ton of time with this knife. But of course, if anything changes in the future, I'll make sure to do an update video on it. Would love to hear your thoughts on this one though down in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, checking out some of my other videos. All help the channel out a ton, and I hope you have a great one. Take care.